And good afternoon. Welcome to Straight Talk. This is your Drive at 5 show. Catherine Tyson, your host. Good afternoon and welcome to the show. It is Tuesday. Today is generally our hot topics. There will be hot topics in the studio today. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Very excited to be here, bringing you tidings and joy, and hope that you're doing okay out there. I know all around us is crazy. It's madness, but you know what? We got to stay positive. We have to stay healthy. We have to stay, intact. Our mental, uh, you know, uh, soundness has to be really our focus right now, because I don't know about you, but sometimes that is the thing that gets questioned the most. So thank you all so much for joining me. Of course, you can call at 943-3700. A lot of you don't want to call. I know that. I get it. But support, that's great. If you want to just call and say hello, that's fine. But trust me, I understand the situation that we're in. We're in a situation where people just are not comfortable with saying stuff. They don't want their name to be attached to certain things. But you know what? I see a lot on Facebook, a lot of commenting, a lot of behavior on there that I think you could pull back on. So yeah, let your voices be heard for sure. This afternoon, I am joined by I don't know what to call you. There's so many titles I could have for you, but it's Dr. Frank McField. He is no stranger to anybody. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Catherine, and good afternoon to your audience.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I'm actually happy to be here. I mean, it was like it's not something that was prepared. It was just something I think that just came out from the universe.
There you go.
I believe in those things. I believe in those divine connections, those spiritual magnetic attractions.
I absolutely believe in that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I think everything happens at the time that it should
Mhm.
happen. I have been wanting to sit with you for such a
Mhm.
long time. You and I have had many, many conversations in the past anyway about a lot of different things. Uh, Today, we are going to touch a little bit on a couple of things. But the first thing I want to do is as you came into the studio this afternoon, I was reminded that you actually had a show yourself. I'd
Okay.
been on your show a couple of times, Public Eye.
Okay. Yes, that's right. That's
Right,
right.
right.
Yeah, right. I remember. I think it's down here.
You
What's
had
the
a
name of that street?
studio,
Godfrey
Godfrey
Nixon
Nixon
Way.
Way.
We
Yes,
recorded in that studio
right,
there when we were with the housing and different things. I
right.
think we did a show. Yeah,
Yeah,
we.
we did. I had come on there. I came on there about two times because I was working at the time in the housing, division. Because
Hmm.
my background is social work, so I'd been doing that for many years. I was 15
Hmm.
plus years with the government as a social worker, community development manager. I actually worked under you when you became minister,
Hmm.
and so I was thinking about that show because I believe it was before its time.
Well, I don't think anything is before its time.
Okay.
You have to have the seed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I definitely did not mind being seed, because seed is very important. And
Yeah.
we go back to the Bible and we talk about the seed,
Right.
and we understand that the seed really continues through the fruit, the tree, and the fruit.
Right.
And so I can see a lot of me, although a lot of people might not recognize it,
Okay.
and people's lives that I've touched
Absolutely.
and things that I've said and things that I've done in this country. I mean, that is the one thing. I'm a spirit, and that they have to deal with the fact that I'm a spirit. So I'm not someone that they can silence or they can get rid of. And I told them that, and I told my father that. I wrote my father in 1992 from Germany after I'd gotten off the streets and I'd been able to get to Germany because a young man that I had worked with in London on an adventure playground called Sylvester James had called me and said, Dr. Frank, you need to get out of the Cayman Islands. I can help you if you get over here. And so I got, actually, I was looking at the building over there, the Hunter and Hunter building. I remember it was Bruce Potterill,
Okay.
a white man from
Right.
Zimbabwe, which
Okay.
used to be Rhodesia, that bought a return ticket for me to be able to go uh, to London. And I borrowed $100 from my uncle CB,
Okay.
gave me a ride to the airport, and I went off there with $100.
Okay. All
And
right.
I went from London to Germany, and that's where I met my son Joshua's mother, Christiana,
Right.
and I stayed there for a while and came back and got married, and then went back to Germany and came back here. Got to work with environmental health.
Right.
I wrote a letter because Thomas Jefferson told me that if I wrote letters, he would come back from the effing grave and
Oh,
get
oh
me if
dear.
necessary.
Okay.
And
So you were attempting that?
uh,
You were attempting that he would, you said, I'm going to write these letters then.
no, it wasn't that I was tempted. It was that it was my obligation to do so.
Okay.
Because if you know something and
Right.
you have something to share that
Right.
is important for the lives of people, then you share it.
Let your voice be heard.
Yeah, it's our responsibility.
Right.
Those that are silent in the times of oppression, in the times of tribulations, in these times that we're in today, those voices that are silent,
Right.
that allow themselves to be silent by bullies,
Right.
those are the people that really have the issue. So, in going back to that, I come back from England, and I had always been writing letters, because you have to understand that my first job was with the National Council of Voluntary Organization. I was fired in '79 for writing letters to the Cayman and Compass advocating for early childhood education. 1979, I lost my job for
Wow.
that.
Okay.
1993, I think it was, 93, 94. In '94, I lost my job at the dump
Okay.
collecting tin cans, being paid $5 or $6 an hour as a tally clerk with a
Okay.
PhD,
Okay.
right?
And you lost your job.
And I lost it. They fired me because I was writing letters, and they
Oh,
told me
okay.
not to write letters. That kind of bullying, because I think, Catherine, what we have to understand, even when I talk about race and racism, and I don't want to jump ahead, okay?
Right.
But we're not just talking about white people. We're talking about the environment, the society as a whole,
Right.
which means black people, brown people, whatever kind of complexion
All of us.
we want to put us in.
Right.
It doesn't work if it's not cohesive and
Right.
and totally solid.
Right.
That we all obey the same dictates. We all have the same pictures. We all are in the same metric. So that's what is important to understand.
Right.
And so I found myself always in that particular situation where I felt a certain amount of responsibility. And so when I got to this whole situation whereby I had to accept responsibility for the fact that I had to continue to do these things, to advocate for this and advocate for that. So I was advocating for a Bill of Rights, back then.
Right.
So if you say I'm before my time, of course, if I wasn't before my time, I wouldn't be able to help people, because I would be just like them in the time that they're in.
Right.
I would be seduced by the same materialism, and I would be seduced by the same or restrained by the same restrictions.
Yeah.
And there wouldn't be that catalyst which we need for change. So
Right.
with Public Eye, in terms of leading to that,
Yeah.
that all came out of the fact that I was always communicating.
Okay. So that was where the idea came, that you decided, okay, I want to use this forum for people to hear, right? The public eye means I'm looking, I'm watching, and I'm now presenting something to you.
Well, you were in the studio, and what happened, I got elected in 96.
Okay.
And in 97, I started Public Eye. But there were some nice people. One of those persons happened to be John Ray and Renard Moxham.
Okay.
And I said to them, I want to do a show. I want to educate people about the environment. I want to continue to do these things. And so they paid for Public Eye for 10 years.
Oh, wow. And you're in the studio now.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Same connection.
Yes,
Look at that.
it's a calling. It's
That
a
is,
calling.
I tell you, that is
10 years.
Yeah.
And nobody remembers Renard for also supporting my college discovery program. And one of the benefactors of that program was Kenneth, Minister Brian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So there you go. It's almost like a
That's how
full.
he got his little degree.
It's almost like a little full circle
That's
thing
why
right
I
there.
always say to the people, I say, if they would look about the many people that I helped in this country through my advocacy.
Yeah. Well, here's a good thing that I know about the seeds that you plant. I plant, everybody plant.
Mhm.
My great grandmother and my grandfather, like all the people that plant these seeds. The interesting thing about it is whether people don't remember that it was you or don't acknowledge that it was you, they are a product of it, and you know
No,
it.
no, no. They're not. I don't want people. You see, that's when I remind people it's not about that.
Yeah.
I don't want that kind of prodigy.
Right.
I want people who does something for somebody
Well,
else
this is what I'm
in
saying.
in a similar way.
Yeah. Well, this is what
I'm
I'm
not
saying.
saying that people should look at me, oh, Dr. Frank did. No, no, no. But go out there
Yeah.
and do something
Right.
that counts for
Right.
people,
Well,
not
this.
to use them because I never set nobody up to use them. I
Yeah.
did it for them
Yeah.
because I wanted them to get a chance to have a consciousness that would cause them to grow in order to grow their society.
Yeah. And there's so many things that I think that you were planting seeds for, that you worked for, that you did, that to this day are still major issues, as if it wasn't mentioned. You know what I mean? Like when I look back at a public eye, because I have like the VHS tape of my appearance on it, with
Mhm.
Deborah Surratt at one point. And the same things we are saying on that show on that day 10 years ago or whenever it was is the same thing that's happening right now. That I'm almost like, are we stuck in a time warp? Like, if we had only did that at that time, we might not be talking about it right now again. So it's just very interesting, I think, with society and stuff like this. Now, you went on to tell us about your background. Like, what is your
Well,
degree in?
yeah, well, I like to first, before I go there, I'd
Okay.
like to just say that it's not we, it's the powers that be,
Okay.
because we don't have power. We
Okay.
don't have power. We are brainwashed to believe that the masses, the people, have power. The masses, the people, don't have power.
Right.
The elite have
Well,
power.
we exercise our power to give power. At
No,
that moment, when we're voting, right? If we're saying that we're giving people power, then are we then exercising our power
well,
to give away our power?
no, we're not exercising power because the power can only exist when you're conscious of the existence of the power.
Okay. All right.
Because power comes through consciousness and not through somebody else's conscious manipulation
Okay.
of your lack of consciousness.
Okay. So then when you talk about the powers that be that are responsible, then how are the powers that be in the positions that they are to be able to exercise these
Because they're
abilities?
organized, because
Okay.
they understand what what power is. Power is the ability to actually cause somebody to do something without their consent.
Okay.
That's power.
Okay.
If I can't make somebody do something without their consent, that's not power.
Okay.
So it's not about consenting individuals. Our society is not run as a result of consenting individuals. That's a lie.
Right.
That is the big lie. But we bite into that apple.
So what is society consisting of then?
Well, society consists of a hierarchy and an oligarchy within the society, a group of circle of people or circles of people who combine their ability to manipulate others and
Okay.
other institutions,
Okay.
and they organize that as the
Okay.
central motivating, organizing, and controlling element in the society. That's
Okay.
what so when we study society, we study hierarchy because if you ask about my background really is in communicative uh, uh, research.
Right.
So a research that's based very much upon hands-on-hand communication with people rather than isolations in the academic libraries.
Right. Okay.
So I'm a field researcher,
Okay.
and that I studied in London and Germany.
Okay. And through that, I guess through that study then is how you've kind of come to this consciousness of society.
Yeah, but yes, but also from reading books. But the difference between me is I'm not going to sound like a textbook.
Okay.
That's a lot of people might not understand me, because if I read their texts and absorb their ideology, their perspective, their metrics, I don't understand the game they're playing with me and
Okay.
with us as a people. And
Okay.
so I'm outside the box. That's what made me very suspicious when I came back in 77, because they
Okay.
said, why come back here, being in America, being in England, being in Germany, and come back here with a PhD?
Right. Okay. Yeah. And why do you think that
Well, I
was?
mean, that was during the time of Manley. So, of course, I got labeled a communist, a socialist, a black power man. So I got those labels. So
Yeah.
when they fired me, that was part of the whole attempt to destroy me. And there were certain politicians that were involved in that particular movement. But being someone who was trained to get into organization, get into groups, and being able to understand undercover more or less how they actually operate, because you don't want to go in there as like a newspaper person or as a student sociologist
Right.
and be asking questions and then write your thesis based upon the questions you ask, because they're going to give you the answers that they
They
want you to
want you to have.
have.
Okay.
Those of us who stay around long enough get the answers that we need to have.
Okay. So, in other words, it really is very, very deliberate then what I want you to know versus what I want you to find out.
Right.
And if you decided to not just accept the answer, then you are closer to an enlightened stage.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I know you in your writings, right? You actually have published quite a bit of things. One of them was a play, and that had you've just done again.
Yeah.
How many years after that was still so very relevant? Let's talk about that a
Well,
little bit.
I mean, I started with Time Longer Than Rope, and Time Longer Than Rope actually came out of a script that I started at the University of York
Okay.
in England. Now, York is an old Roman town, and that's where Constantine was actually crowned by his soldiers after the death of his family. So the
Okay.
great Constantine the Great was crowned there. So York has a lot of history. The York Cathedral, the Scottish Rite, which is a large thing, starts in York, which is all near Scotland, Edinburgh, Scarborough, and those places. So I was educated in those places.
Right. Right.
Had a very elite education, by the way, not with your traditional people like Gwyn Williams, Lawrence Orbach, who ran Quattro, very, very wealthy people.
Right.
And so I was blessed, and so I kind of took advantage of that, and that gave me the interest in seeing things different, because that wasn't your American university where they fill you up with this and that and the other thing, but they don't really try to give you the philosophy, expand your mind, make you begin to think about the universe and the fact that you're actually a human being and you're more than flesh.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So when Time Longer Than Rope was written, I had gotten up one morning at York and I couldn't sleep, and I started writing.
Okay.
And I'm dyslexic, so I've always had problems writing. But there's a difference between writing that and writing from the fact of ideas. And
Right.
so the ideas that came to me, and I worked on it, I got obsessed and I couldn't stop it. So I finished it in, I think it was 74, and I took it to a publisher through a friend of mine, the professor who had taken me from New York to England,
Right.
Lawrence Orbach.
Right.
And he got it to a publisher, and they had it for a while, and I decided to look them up and try to get it back, and they said it's too didactic. Well, you know
Okay.
what the word didactic means,
Right.
right?
Yeah. That was in 74, right?
you're,
Yeah.
you're teaching.
Okay.
They don't want you to teach.
Right.
And I've decided, it's never been published, but I got the old manuscript. It's all brown and all that sort of stuff. And then when I came back here and I got fired in 79, and I was with this lady, Carol Knutson, there's living life and things like that, and Kim and Kai. I actually wrote it in Kim and Kai.
Okay.
But we were coming back from Pedro Castle one day, and I was driving a Mustang, and Carol said somebody was hitchhiking. She said, "Stop and pick that person up." I know that person. And I stopped and picked the person up. As soon as the person got in the car, they said, "Yeah, they left me there at Pedro Castle after the dance, but yeah, that's okay. Time Longer Than Rope." So Carol said to me after we got back to the house, she said to me, she said, "Time longer than rope." She said, "Didn't I read that someplace in your manuscript?"
Oh, wow.
And I sat down and we went into the manuscript and I sat down. I wrote that in one night.
Oh, wow.
Time Long on the Rope. That was the
Okay.
first play.
Okay.
That's a classic. But one of the most important things about it is the character, Mr. Wilder. And if we go back and we look at that play, we'll see that that character Wilder didn't believe in our normal conventional idea of time.
Okay.
And so the character in Time Long and a Rope, the developer, who I say is Dart today,
Right.
so it was foreseeing Dart.
Wow.
And if we go back and you look at the end of the play at the airport scene, you'll see what I predicted there as well. So there are a lot of prediction there in Time Long and a Rope. That's the first play. Downside Up is the second one. I wrote that in New York in 1984.
Okay. And so in Time Longer Than Rope, obviously, like you're talking about things that you kind of you kind of prophesied a little bit, right? Or you just saw the
Oh,
trends and
oh,
feelings.
yeah, but if you go back, no, but I mean, hey, I'm a spiritual person.
Yeah.
I'm an African.
Yeah.
I'm full of the spirit, and Cayman was always full of Dapis and spirit.
Yeah.
And I always saw the Dapis, and I believe in Dapis.
Okay.
And I have been able to go back to see that the Dapi is the same thing as the Egyptian Ka, Ka.
Okay.
And that's how I was able to understand that the ancient Egyptian, which I now call Negus Egyptian, the priests were from Nefi, Nigeria.
Okay.
Ife, Nigeria.
All right. So in that, it's almost like you have the assistance of the ancestors.
Exactly.
Okay, no, I completely understand it because I really believe. I mean, and even the listening audience, can think about the times when you're in your kitchen and you kind of just feel your grandmother
Yes,
is
you
there.
can.
The
Yes, you
hairs,
can.
the
Yes,
hairs
you
come up
can.
on
Yes,
the
you
back,
can.
back of
Yes,
your
you
neck,
can.
and you just
That's what I think that
yeah.
this generation that doesn't understand that.
You know what I think? In
Oh,
all honesty, I want to say that I think it's because we we have because I think we're responsible in some ways. We have allowed them to be so distracted by so many things, and I think the distraction is what allows people to take away your control, like you're saying, right?
yes,
So you're distracted by all these shiny little
yes,
things, and
yes,
yesterday with WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram gone
yeah,
down. I mean, I felt it. I was like, wow, this is really serious here. And I
yes.
just felt the power of those mediums and how they have almost replaced human
Yes,
relations and
the
human
humanness
exactly.
of
Yeah.
relationships.
So I believe
Yeah,
those types of things have been some of
they're demonic.
yeah, and
They're demonic
I just
instruments.
think they're
Yeah,
huge in understanding why we're no longer in tune with our grandmother,
and with
feeling
our
our
creator,
grandmother
therefore,
in
creator.
this room, feeling, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
being in
because hey,
contact because there's so much other things that just blocking that.
right, Catherine,
Yeah,
right.
it's
You're
true.
there because you know that what we do, you people don't understand that religion is about ancestor worship.
Right.
They don't understand that
Right.
because they haven't done the time to
Right.
understand it.
Yes.
But when we're talking about dapis
Right.
and we feel them, and when
Yeah.
we're talking about the importance of stories and the Jews saying that stories love God and God loves stories,
Yeah.
we're going to tell about God in stories. You can't tell no story that there's not a spirit in it. And so
Right.
words are spirit. Like I say, my language is my spiritual biblical cord,
Right.
and I got knowledge of God in my DNA.
Right.
So what you're going to teach me is just metric to
Yeah.
confuse me
Yeah.
because you structure that.
Yeah.
But what is in me, what is in my soul, that
Yeah.
is something different. So when I pour out my soul to people, when I pour it out in time long and rope, and I'm able to see what was going to happen here. And when I tell people that what is happening here is that these people are actually taking the culture because they felt it was none. That's why they never elevated. That's why our people won't promote it so
Right.
that they can come and put a new culture on it,
Right.
their metric on it, and nobody will complain because the kids won't know no
They won't
different.
know anything.
They when they look at the mirror in the mirror, you know who they're gonna see? The foreigner in the mirror.
Yeah. Well, they're being distracted. They're being so distracted they're not even paying attention to some of these things. And I think in some ways is when I look at how we are void, and I think that's the word. There's a void in our our society in the last 20, 30 years. It's just been this creation of a void where we're no longer feeling almost anymore, right? And I feel something about that is very interesting because it feels like when people can come to a place that is void of anything and they can just create a new thing for themselves.
They're robotic.
And they're no longer thinking about who they found there. They're just thinking about what they brought here and what they're going to create here. You understand what
Yeah,
I'm
but if
saying?
you read this history, you see this has happened for
Yeah.
thousands of years. This is
Yeah.
nothing new.
Yeah.
This is a pattern.
Yeah.
This is a pattern of Aryan colonialism.
Yeah. So
The colonization of the souls of people
yeah.
and the exploitation and spiritual mining of their spiritual energy and turn it into something else
Yeah.
is what happens.
Yeah.
And what has happened here? The Kenyan is walking like a zombie
Put your
because he's no
phone down and wake up.
Hey, I mean,
feels
come on.
like-
At least some people like to say, well, keep a little bit of a culture so we can have a little bit of differences so that we all don't look and act the
Well,
same.
we're not all going to look and act the same. There's no fear in that. So,
Gosh.
right. So, if that's your rationale, then that's not even a reasonable rationale. Because I think, and this is what I love about other places too. I know I visited Tortola, and I just loved Tortola when I went there because, I found that I didn't know what it was. I went on a training many, 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 many years ago. And what I found there were as close to Africa as I think I would have landed. That's how I felt.
Tortola.
And they were so proud of themselves, of everything. It was kind of new to me because I grew up in Cayman. So we've been straightening our hair since we were little kids.
Yeah.
And what I also loved about it is that there wasn't business with me. Like, I'm in the store. You think they were worried about me? They were serving their own people.
Because of identity.
They weren't impressed with tourists. They weren't dying over us. We were all like these new people sitting there. A lot of Americans that came from America came on all over the place. We had come for this conference. And they weren't studying us. They were busy with themselves. And I love that. There was something about that I just loved. I felt like, wow, this is true. This is something that they're saying, look, you guys are visiting, but you're not better than us.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to you and you'll get your food or you'll get your whatever, but our people also matter. To me, that spoke volumes. And I will remember it all the time.
Relationships.
From Tortola.
Relationship. Yes. And when we talk about relationships, what relationship you start with first? Isn't it the relationship that you have with your mother?
Yeah. Well, I mean, she brought you here.
Exactly.
She brought you here.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So we see that instinctively we're born to identify with a group.
Right.
That's human.
Right.
That's natural. That's okay. But it doesn't mean that you don't have to go outside and don't want to go outside. That's fine too. But you don't abandon the root.
Right.
Because then when the root dies, you will die too.
Hey, exactly, because you're connected to that. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I think the conversation is so necessary. It's so many things we have to cover. Yeah. I'm going to have to get you back. So I hope that you have some time in your schedule. You are listening to Straight Talk Drive at 5. This is Catherine Tyson, your host. Today is our Hot Topics Tuesday. I have in the studio with me Dr. Frank McField, and we are chatting, and you don't want to miss any of it. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages.
From the time the Greek took that bit.
And welcome back to Straight Talk. This is your Drive at 5 show. Catherine Tyson, your host. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. It is a Hot Topics Tuesday. We are sitting in the studio with Dr. Frank McField. He is a PhD sociologist.
Sociologist.
Yes, and we're talking about right now. We've been just talking about everything, but we're talking about your plays. And you were just telling me something during the break that I think is very interesting. And I want you to share that
Well,
story.
they Brent Fuller.
Yeah, he used to work for the Compass. I
Yeah,
remember this
yes,
name.
yes, and he wrote. He came here, I think, in the 50s, and he used to collect shells. He lived in Northside, and he wrote a book called "Duppies Is
Okay.
Duppies," and that's I use that line in "Time Long on a Rope" after the accident, and really comes back as a ghost because the duppy is a very important symbolism in the play because
Right.
that's where all the philosophy is about going to heaven and
Right.
getting an education and all that sort of
Right.
stuff. And Beatman says to Ella, Duppies is, and she said, the only dupper around this place is you.
Okay. And you put that in there.
Because she said you never showed your face anyhow.
Right.
And I put that in there. But it's seriously a lot of research, that some things, but you research and you this is collective memory, which is very important to a people.
Right.
Bringing the memory together, the different parts. So when you tell people why you did this and things like that, and that's why we study literature. That's why we have people who write about playwrights and literary writers, people who write literature, because it gives people an insight into the exploration
Right.
of another dimension of their culture that they never really see. They don't see the subtext of the life they live.
Right.
And we go and we live that subtext and we feel it and then we tell it. And then it becomes, of course, something that later on people will sit down. They could imagine anything that maybe I was saying at that particular time. But interesting because, after these books were published and I think in 2000 or something like that, and they were just actually purchased by the Ministry of Education. The remaining copies, which were like 180 copies or something to that extent, Miss Julia O'Connor Conley was kind enough to buy them to put them in the school and the library after all these years.
Okay.
Now, these books should actually be used for exams
Right.
in literature. Well, our kids should be tested on knowing themselves and not just
Right.
knowing other people.
Right. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, and I wonder when you are, because you talk a lot about the history, kind of how how we started. You've done a lot of research on that, just
Mhm.
what Cayman was, where
Yeah,
Cayman came
yeah.
from, and I believe that that is, like you said, really very necessary
Well,
for our young people
but
to
I
know
mean, most
this.
people don't know that the Cayman Islands culture is the most African culture in the Caribbean.
Wow, there you go. No, they don't. They will not admit it.
No, because and if you read Crichton's book,
Okay.
He's Founded Upon the Seas, and you go into the part where he's dealing with the actual population at the point of emancipation in 34, and he does a breakdown of the types of people that are here at that time. You see that there are many people with African names.
Okay.
But if so that the original African, not the generational one,
Right.
okay, man, but the African,
Right.
born in Africa,
Right. Right.
percentage wise, there were more in the Cayman Islands than any other part of
And
the
why?
Caribbean.
And why is that?
Well, it could be because when they were doing the control policing of the slave trade, when the slave trade was abolished, the British did a lot of policing. They were involved in policing in the Caribbean. And when they took some people off, they couldn't get them back to Africa, so they would put them certain places.
Okay.
So I think Rotan could have been also a place where those colonies where they might have let off quite a few there, but when you read the descriptions of the celebrations which took place after emancipation and the criticism that certain people had of it, then but they described the African rituals, definitely West African rituals.
Okay.
And if you notice that Kimani white people, if you look back to my generation, Kimani white people act like black people.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
You ever seen that?
Or they act the same,
They,
is what you're saying. They
no,
act the
no, no, no.
same.
Let's not go there.
Okay.
Let's go there.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go there.
Okay.
I was born in '48,
Okay.
and I used to go up by the post office,
Right.
and I used to see how the people. So even if it was a pretend,
Right.
in order to get an agreement, they did so because you got to understand now that Kim, I never had the plantocracy. Kim, I never had the wealth to create the class material differences
Right.
between people. There was no educational institution. There was no established
So that's
church.
what I'm saying. So everybody acted the same.
Yeah, but the fact is, although they acted the same, the source of the action, the information of the action, that's why Caymanian white people believed in Dapi and Obia.
Okay. Because they
And if you
thought
read,
the same. Because there was no, in other words, like
yeah,
in America.
the glue, what held them together was not white culture.
Exactly.
It was
Well,
black
that,
African
well,
culture.
well,
And
that,
that is
well, that's my
important. And
point.
that's what
Yes.
made Cayman different than other places. A lot of people don't understand that.
Okay.
Because if they had gone to school in England or been brought up in the Presbyterian church
or
in
the
England,
U.S. as well.
or in the US, they would have had a security of themselves
That's
that
right.
would be different and apart,
Right.
and the society
The
would be
separation.
structured differently.
Absolutely.
The ideas don't have to be great big ideas from institutions. It just has to radiate from people, and there be an agreement,
Right.
but with in regards to it, to create the metrics.
Yeah.
That people operated on, so that they lived in a harmony that was different in other places, because they were also very much alike, even if they were physically living in this neighborhood and this one living in this neighborhood.
Exactly.
That is what happened. When the transition came, for instance, when I came back in 77 and the people were coming from abroad to create the financial service industry. When we had tourism, everybody was together. That's why we could have the great feasts at Galleon and have great times in Cayman Kai
Right.
that you can't have. You see
Right.
anybody integrating and together today? What
Yeah.
happened to the fusion?
Because it is a very, very obvious and deliberate separation.
Well, it's not just obvious and deliberate. It's
Okay.
also weakness on Caymanian's part,
Yeah.
and lack of identity and
Well-
security and understanding about what identity and this metric really is
and,
all
and
about.
somehow the separation that has been created is very, very obvious of who has and who has not. And unfortunately, the majority of Caymanians may be on the has not side. So I want to ask you then, as a sociologist, that's my opinion, but I want to ask you as a sociologist, and you've done all these studies, looking into this stuff. When did it change? When was the switch?
When they had the numbers,
Okay.
when
Numbers.
they gained the numbers, they came in, and I actually spoke to a lawyer. He just saw me out on the road across from the court a few days ago, and he came out and talked to me, and he explained to me that he lived in West Bay, and he's so nice to the West Bay people, and the West Bay people are so nice to him. That was how it was. That's what I'm talking about.
That's how it should be.
And he doesn't want to move from West Bay. And he was saying things about the other English people that are coming in here, because there were people who were just waiting to get the numbers to go on the other team. And there were
Okay.
people who wanted to stay with the team that took them in the first place.
Okay.
The Caymanians, the people that believe in Cayman and knew what Cayman was and Caymanian is.
Then I'm going to ask you another question, and that is with the question of the change. When? That's an important question. But the other question is, why is it then, when I was born, which was in the 60s, right?
Mhm.
In the late 60s, people, by the way, but by the time I was born, it was a pride thing to talk about your great great grandfather being Irish or being English or
Mhm.
being Scottish.
That had
And
to,
so that to me was very, very a disservice to us, because when I was I traveled to the US at 5 and then went back at 12 and stayed
Hmm.
there for years. They were very clear that they didn't want to hear nothing about no great grandfather, Irish, Scottish. My family's with McLaughlin. They didn't want to hear that. I was black.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Period.
well, the McLaughlins didn't want to hear that.
Well, this is what I'm saying.
McLaughlins didn't want to hear that. They were white. They
Well,
wanted to hear they were black.
well, really? Okay,
Yeah,
because
I
here,
mean,
growing
if
up here, it was not that
well,
way.
look,
Because
they,
people from Georgetown, a
they,
dark person, if you call them black, they would fight you.
no, no, we have to go back. We
That's
have.
how I grew up.
I remember that Jim Borden always did not want people to talk about race, and
Okay.
I was very, very close to him,
Okay.
and I talked about race. Okay, and the reason why he didn't want to talk about it, I mean, maybe it's kind of difficult to get that all in, but I think it's important to understand Jim Borden and his mentality and the way he thought about his friend Terry Woodward.
Okay.
Terry, Mr. Terry, Oswald Terry.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it has to do with some incident in the school where he went in Savannah school, and he went to the school and they didn't want the boy there, and Jim stood up for him. Now, I am not saying that we didn't have the racial structuring, because we do, because we go back to Mr. Michael in the Michael school, and that whole Michael Charity that came in after the abolition, because you're not going to have slavery and not have racial discrimination and racial thing. That's why you have mixed kids from the very beginning, because the white man could have the brown woman and the black woman and the white woman, and
Okay.
the black and the brown man could have the brown woman and the black woman, and the black man could have the black woman only. So you see the population, how it would get smaller black and more in the middle, and then on the other side. So
Okay.
we see how the population is mixed. So when you're dealing with color and we're dealing with the metrics of slavery, you're going to have these problems, but how are they socially contained and
Right.
controlled? How are they, how is the power negotiation done in the society?
Right.
It's still through consensus, because you can't fight the other guy, because you don't have the numbers, you
Right.
don't have the army, you don't have all these things that they have in all the other places.
Right.
You don't have the wealth, you don't have the education, you don't have the church.
Yeah. But I want to know, at what point did we as a people preferred to identify with something that we may not have been?
When the British colonialists came here,
Okay.
Gerard or whatever his name was, when those came and they mashed up Ormond Panton's thing, and they didn't want us to go with Jamaica because they had a plan for us, which is the plan that we're in now.
And that plan is
The plan is that we, because of the doctrine of effective occupation, we literally own a gold mine. This place is a gold mine.
right.
Okay, this is a gold mine,
Right.
and
it's
they're
obvious
mining,
even
and they're
now.
mining it, and we're not
Okay.
getting it anything out of it. We're not
Okay.
getting our share. But the rest of them, they don't even know these things, because they never study history. They never been in these people's houses. They never been in these people's bedrooms in these places. They
Okay.
don't know these people. I'm saying that bluntly. They
Right.
don't know the psychic. They don't know the ghosts of these people. These people know what they have. They know what's going on in the world. They know why this place is important. This place is flooding with capital.
Right.
Capital that will wash all of us out and make all of us meaningless.
Right.
But they're not sharing it with us. That's why it's going to make us meaningless. If they were sharing it with us, it would make us meaningful, because it would empower us, and we would use that to empower our people by giving them the opportunities that they need, and by making sure that they live a standard of life, and not that they are underclass. We are creating our people as an underclass in order that these people can come from England and other places where they're so poor and they have nothing, and they can become lords and ladies here.
Right.
And we're going on with this. This is, I mean, to me, this is spiritually so decadent and so destructful.
Right.
I have a problem with it. I have
Yeah.
a problem with those people who can't see through things because they just think life is flesh.
So what's the answer?
Well, I think the answer, Catherine, is that consciousness, a conscious awakening of the people to realize that they own the land. They own the soil. It was their ancestors that fought the mosquitoes. that fought hunger and starvation, that could not even get to East End from Georgetown because of the rock and the bush and the things like that. They didn't go in a canoe. The people in West Bay who were poor people, the people in Borden Town who live in shelters and when we go back and we look at the history, when we look at the things, and we were so poor, and you say, oh, we're so poor, so now we're so rich. But why are we rich? Because God came and
Right.
saved us?
Right.
No, somebody saw that they could make a profit
Yeah.
off of us and our ignorance
Okay.
and our lack of fortitude to believe in ourselves, like those people in the Caribbean you're talking about, that they won't go to those countries and take it over,
No,
but they can come here
they won't.
because we can be misled,
Yeah.
because we believe in the goodness of people, because
Yeah.
of how we were able to live before.
Right.
But these people are not coming from those experiences that the
Yeah.
Marings are coming from, or the Bardens are coming from, or the Coconels are coming from. Anytime I see Miss Bridget, I just feel great about Captain Charles Coconel again, and I
Right.
just feel great about those white Caymanian families.
Right.
But when I see these people coming here with their arrogance
Right.
and trying to play like they're aristocrats, when I know aristocrats when I see them, and they're not the most impressive people to me.
Exactly.
They're not
Right.
the most impressive people to me.
Yeah.
They are dead spirits.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Because if you have traveled, you can discern it.
Hey, of course you
Absolutely.
can. I mean, I
Yes.
went to Germany. I learned German. I dreamt in Germany. I was there. I know those people. I know their ways.
Right.
I don't try to make people uncomfortable. But if the Caymanian people knew me, they would know that I know what's happening. I know these people. I know the ghosts when I see them. They are setting up a class system here. They're setting up the gated communities here. We already have two.
Absolutely.
We already have two South African billionaires here after they ruined South Africa.
Well, I mean, you just said a word, which is creating gated communities. You're absolutely right. I've always been very aware of when I drive on the island and I see all of these developments going up and starting prices $800,000. I'm like,
Yeah,
there's
right.
not a regular Caymanian that's going to buy that.
But people don't understand what's
So
happening.
what's going on, and when I see them literally next to each other, 1, 2, 3 across the street from each other, I see 4 buildings that are going to have 200 or 100 plus apartments that are going to cost $800 million a piece, and they're almost sold out. I'm thinking, hello, who's not paying attention?
What's happening in terms of little
Why is
small
that
businesses?
okay? It's
You
not
see,
okay.
you see the other the Indians and all kinds of other people coming and sitting down in the businesses that we have.
Like
Like
They're
that.
coming up like
You
that.
see that they're replacing us just like that,
Money is coming
right in our face.
Yes. So what do we do now? I almost feel like the horse is out of the what did Jamaicans say? The horse and come out the gate or
Well, I
whatever.
felt that anyway. That's why I
I-
wrote. That's
I
why
almost
I
feel
I,
that.
I wrote Time Longer Than Rope, and that's why
In 1974.
79,
79.
79,
1979.
1979. I wrote that
Yeah.
because I wanted to tell them that I knew what was going to happen. I had been abroad. I had paid attention. I had been taught by important people as to what to look for in the quality of people, and I could tell the different qualities of white people and black people.
Wow.
So being black person to me wasn't all that important. It was
Right.
your quality,
Right.
the dignity which you have.
Yeah, because it's
And
not
what-
about color. It's not about the race, because people are
no,
people.
yes, because that's the reason why the black person could be my greatest enemy.
Right.
So I'm not fooled by that. A white
Right.
person could be my ally.
Right.
That's one of the reasons why I made sure all my association with women were women that were supporting my ideological stance,
Right.
because I wasn't selling out.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say I had enough of your chastising me
Right.
for the fact that I have a spirit
Yeah.
and that you could kill me, but you can't kill the spirit.
But on the outside now, someone could have seen you with your white German wife and think, oh, he's out there with this black power hand, but he marries, our white princess.
Yeah, no, I didn't marry a princess. I married
I'm just
a
saying.
working class German woman
Who was
but
willing
I-
to
but-
work with you.
who worked with
Work
me. And you know
along
the
with you.
reason why? Because when I got to Germany, I had nothing.
Listen.
And you know the reason why I got there? Because I had to run from Cayman.
Listen. Before you even finish that, I had a conversation with with a Christian many years ago, and she said, I'm not, I don't quote me, but I believe she said she might have met you the day anyway. She met you this week, and you never left.
Yeah, no, no, no. I never.
So, you know,
The
like
only
she told the story of how, you know, she
that
met you, and it
that
was,
that that's
yeah.
actually a very interesting story. You
Okay.
know, that's an incredible story because I showed up there, and I showed up there because really every friend that I went to, which means former friend, woman that had a relationship or whatever, but they nobody could keep me,
Right.
right? You know, because I was actually really drunk all the time.
Right, right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was
you were
I was
you
in
were struggling.
I was in struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in struggle.
Yeah.
Right. And so the fact that she actually gave me a place, she
Yeah.
gave me a little security and helped me.
Yeah.
And so I had that commitment to her.
Right.
And so if people would always say, well, you know what, they all have to understand that I have never gotten involved with anybody that I feel I can't turn my back on.
Right.
I got to have a loyal person
Right.
next to me.
That was what was important.
That is always important,
Yeah.
because my struggle I decided upon very early in my life. I decided upon that when I went to school in New York.
Yeah.
I was a college discovery student. I don't know if you ever heard of college discovery program. They had the SEEK program and the college discovery
Yeah.
program. That's why when they first started giving financial support scholarships to black uh, s- uh, uh, high school graduates that were not didn't have good grades. I graduated high school with 69.90 average, and I failed my English
And
regions.
this was in New York?
This is New York, Staten Island. I went
Okay.
to Curtis High School on
Okay.
Staten Island,
Okay.
and I graduated in 67.
Yeah.
And I went on to the Borough Manhattan Community College. And I always tell a story about shaking Bobby Kennedy giving me a Black Power handshake
Okay.
hours before he was assassinated the following morning,
Oh,
early the
wow.
following morning.
Wow.
Robert Colt from the Bill Crosby show gave me a Black Power handshake in 1969 after we had taken over the college to demand African American courses. Of course, that those days we figured that would be good, but that's what they weren't going to teach us about slavery. They weren't going to teach us about African history, which is
Right.
the history I'm in now
Right.
into, which
Right.
is why I know so much about Egypt and the fact that Egypt was a black country
Right.
and not a white country.
Right.
And that gives me an understanding of the Bible and what's going on in the Bible in terms of the overthrow of
Right.
black rule.
Right. And I love that. I love that you just said that. And I definitely I want you to come back. I mean, if you'll come back tomorrow, I'd love to have
I
you,
love to come
because
back.
I'd love to talk about that history that you're talking about. So tomorrow, I think I want to focus on that, the history that you're talking about, because I think what happens with even with black people, I think we tend to think of our history as slavery. So what you said was very interesting, and I
Yeah,
love that.
we think that our
Like
history
that's
began with
not
slavery. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
like it's something that
yeah,
happened before this slavery
yeah.
thing
A
happened.
long time.
Right. And
For
so
if it's the first history is
so
black history.
yeah, so if we're taking so much time focusing on the slavery, of course we're going to feel angry and hurt, and
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and
yeah. We
all
just
of this
show us the
stuff.
whips and all that, but they don't show
Yeah,
us the kings and queens, because when they show us
exactly.
about Africa, they show us about them colonizing Africa. They don't show us about Africa when Africa was
Right.
before them,
Right.
because they
Yeah.
all come out of Africa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the point was, is civilization came about in Africa, which was natural. It had all the resources, it had the climate, it had all the conditions for civilization to grow. You can't grow civilization and snow in caves.
Right. Wow. Yeah. That's great. I think I want to just, be very clear about, what this discussion is about, what it's kind of come down to, that it's not about anyone else. It's about pride of yourself and pride of who you are. And I think Cayman is such an amazing place that everybody can agree that it is a gold mine, that it is,
Mhm.
a jewel. And so there should be no reason why we are not absolutely proud of our history and
Mm.
proud of who we are, and understand that it's our birthright.
And but Catherine, that's why we should be taxing people. People should be paying us to be
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And I don't mean pay us one pay and then nothing. I mean paying us continuously. We
Right.
should earn something of their profits. I'm sorry.
Sounds fair.
And well, it's
It
fair in
sounds
every other
fair.
part of the world.
Sounds
Well,
fair.
what's the
I mean, if
exception?
you're able to buy an $800 million apartment, they're all sold out. I think you could be taxed. It
I
shouldn't be
think
a problem.
because you don't have no conscience, so we can't expect you're going to give anything back.
Right, right,
And if you give it, you're not going to give it to us. You're not going to
right,
give it to our people. When you're not going to give it to the boys and girls that I need to uplift, that I've always been concerned about.
right. Yeah.
You're not going to help me to reform them because the systems, change so fast
And
that
that
that mess people up.
and that number is increasing. That
And
number of the young men and women that you're talking about, you and I in the same arena of work that we've worked with for all of the last 40 years. I mean,
Mhm.
for you, me 20 years, and you know 20 or 20 plus years before that, and that still exists, and that's the reality,
And
and
that's
it's
who,
saddening.
and I know that you've always been passionate about this, Catherine. That's one reason why I enlisted you or beg you to come with us in our project. And our project was a project about community,
Right.
and they made it about
And
housing. It
it broke down right
it broke
away,
down
which is sad.
because and they took the community off of
Absolutely.
it.
It
I
took the
mean,
community out of
because
it.
because they don't want that, because that to them is socialist and common. What kind of foolishness these people talking about?
Yeah.
The court where the queen has the royal court, the aristocracy, that's communal. That's
Yeah.
community.
Right. Well, just knowledge. I mean, just understanding. And this is my issue too. I think if you don't know something, you really should not be making decisions about
No, you
something that you
shouldn't. You
don't
shouldn't
know.
get political office. That's
No,
why when we see the
not at
court,
all.
that's a Templar's court.
Yeah.
That means something. The Lord is up there on that pedestal for a reason.
Right.
Everything in there is sign.
Right.
And if you know how to read sign, you know the exact system. These people
Right.
have no, they do not understand symbolism.
Yeah.
They do not understand culture. They do not understand the society in which they're in. So people could come and lift the wealth from them,
Yeah.
fly away with it, and they would
Yeah.
never
We
know
don't know.
the value of what they had.
Yeah. As the Americans say, stay woke.
Stay woke.
Wake up, stay woke.
Stay
Dr.
woke.
Frank, thank you so much for joining me this
Well,
afternoon. The hour has gone.
it's so fast.
It went so fast, but I definitely want you to come back because I
Like,
want to talk about our history. I
yeah,
want to talk about
I,
how Christianity is connected to. I mean, I
I
love all the stuff that you've researched,
7 years.
I think people
7 years.
need to hear these
I got
things.
sick doing it, just sitting there for 14 hours a
Of
day.
course, yeah.
For
It can get like that.
and
But you got to get it out of you.
no, but I mean,
got to get it
it's
out
my
of you.
mission. It's
Yeah.
my mission. I accept it. I accept the consequences of. That's why when people mock me and say I can't get a job and I can't get this, I can't get that, I know that my name is going to be remembered
Right.
not much longer than them.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for eternity.
Well, it's not forgotten. I can tell you that. Anyone who's ever come in
And I
contact
know what
with you
eternity is.
remembers.
I'm sorry to tell
Yeah,
them that,
for sure.
so
It is so good to see you.
yeah,
Good to
same.
have you
It's
in
so
here.
good to see you too.
You're looking healthy and
Thank you.
great,
Yeah.
and
I'm
happy.
swimming
and I
every
love that.
morning at Smith Cove. That's why Sandy knows how to find me.
Well,
She said,
this is your birthright. This is came out as your birthright. So, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
"Thank you so much.
I will definitely,
Thank
have
you.
you back in tomorrow. So I hope you guys enjoyed this show today. This is your Straight Talk Drive at 5 show. Catherine Tyson, your host. It has been kind of hot. It's been hot in the studio with Dr. Frank McField, and we shall chat again tomorrow. So make sure that you tune in and tell your friends. Have a great evening. Take care of yourself.
Yep.